2017. Ivar the timber dog and the flies and I are down here at Sugar Hills over on the west side. We harvested here last fall and into the early winter, and I documented the heck out of this. And I'm here following up to look at the regen. I thought it would be too early to see much, but I wanted to take a look anyway. I'm witnessing something that I've never seen before. There is an immense amount of oak in this Shelterwood removal cut, and that's what we had hoped for, but I'm trying to figure out why in the barest spots that were the main skid trails, why here is where we have the most oak. Acorns obviously didn't come in this fast, so these are plants that must have been here, and we ran them over, and as is the case with oak, the root system stays alive even when you sever the plant above ground. It's called coppice, and you just have a million oaks scattered nice and evenly throughout this whole skid trail, and all the skid trails in here. But it's because it was here to begin with. But why am I not seeing as much in the non-disturbed areas, the non-skid trail areas, as I'm seeing in the skid trails? So I really need to understand this phenomenon. There's an oak that's a stump sprout, but I'm just not seeing much here. Maybe it is here. Yeah, I guess there's that, and there's that stump sprout. So I think that maybe it was here all along, but it's just showing up so much better in the skid trail because that ran over the other species that in this case are less desirable than the oak. There's an oak that was present. Those are new oaks. Yeah, this is a unqualified success. Look at all this oak. I got to look back through the video footage that I took and see if we saw this much in here. I remember exactly being in this spot and videoing it and giving a big tribute to my brother Nick, who was the first one to thin this. Actually, he cut right over there and he thinned this. Yeah, so he cleared the aspen, and that's the aspen regeneration from the clearing. And then this he thinned, and when he thinned it, he left a lot of oak, and that oak threw seed. And that seed, in the form of acorns, is the origination of all these young oaks, and they did nothing for 15 years, except that they struggled along and their roots got stronger than the plants above ground. And when finally given a chance, because the oaks can re-sprout right out of the roots, they are now going to really do well. Yeah, so my first observation that the oaks, the young baby oaks, were only present in the most disturbed areas is not quite true. They're the most obvious in the most disturbed areas because they're the ones who are able to pioneer or respond quickest. But they're also out here in the undisturbed or lesser disturbed. When I say undisturbed, this whole site was disturbed to some degree. We're getting more sunlight than it's had in a long, long time. So that is going to lead to more of this oak showing up. But for the most part, we're seeing it in the areas where the other species were driven over, and they're not responding from the roots like the oak does. Now this is going to be fun to work with. We'll be spending a lot of time here releasing this from competition and making this merely a pure oak site, except for this beautiful maple that we left, and we talked about that. So we've got this scattering of maple that we left for quality purposes, for aesthetic purposes, and just in case nothing else had worked here, we'd still have that to kind of keep the stand in timber, although we knew something would work. Anyway, pretty exciting. We'll have nice maple to work with here too. Maple and oak, good species for the future in the face of potential climate change. Continuing on here at Sugar Hills over on the west side where we were last winter. This is the first stage of an oak shelter wood. What we just looked at was the second stage of an oak shelter wood where we removed the shelter wood. Here we created the shelter wood in which we left a number of oak for seed. But I was curious at the time that I was in here whether or not we even really needed to do that because it looked like there was a fair amount of oak on the ground, and I'm seeing it here because these didn't just seed in, these had to have been here. There, there, there. But it isn't as dense as the shelter wood removal that we just did. But there's quite a bit here, and we'll get more from the trees that we left, and then we'll come in and remove those trees. To give as much sunlight to these young oak as possible. Because to grow straight and to grow quality and to grow fast, they need full sunlight. And many of these oaks that we left are mature and at optimal value right now, and the longer we leave them, the further they're gonna, or the quicker they're gonna go downhill in value. We don't want that. We also left some maple and some yellow birch here, and that will be for long term. And that great big maple was, I guess, a snag that we left for wildlife purposes. Yeah, I felt really good about this job when we were doing it, and I feel even better about it now. Continuing on at Sugar Hills on July 10th, 2017. Now I'm in the Northern Hardwoods thinning, all age management, meaning we're going to have all kinds of ages going on at the same time here. The reason that works is because most or all of the species that are growing in these northern hardwood all age management areas are shade tolerant, or at least moderately shade tolerant. So there's a hard maple. That's probably the most shade tolerant. And there's another hard maple back there. And basswood and a big hard maple, and we'll see some yellow birch in here somewhere, and I'm not seeing it right now. There's a nice red oak back there, and yeah, the site is healed up really well considering we were just here 9 months ago, and I documented this very spot pretty darn well, very closely. I'm going to get a basal area measurement here using the basal area tool that I've shown you before, where I count the number of trees in one of the different slotted sizes and I multiply by the factor that goes with that. Maybe I can show you how we do that. We're going to use a factor of 10, which is the middle one. I'm holding it at exactly the right distance and level. That one doesn't count. Can't quite tell. That one counts. That one counts. That one counts. I got to get these flies off my hand. Hold on. So starting again with that first one that counted 1, 2, 3. Well, it's close, but we're going to throw it out. The next one that close we'll throw in. Like that. 4. Not quite. 5. Not quite. Alright, so we count 5 in this spot, times 10 factor is a basal area of 50. That's not bad. We were shooting for a basal area reduction of around 50 to 60, and we're trying to keep it in a range of 60 to 80, which on the most productive sites is going to require we're in here about every 7 years, which seems crazy, but that's what they're doing. And the idea is to be keeping the stand thin enough that there's significant growth per tree and getting a lot of quality per tree, but keeping a distribution of sizes, like this nice maple right here. They worked so hard to skid around that one. They did a great job. That basswood would be considered on the large side, or will be by the time we get back here 7 years from now. There's another maple that's on the medium to small size. And then we got all this stuff going on in the ground, that's 10 to 15 years old since the last time we were here, and then we're going to have all kinds of new stuff from this time. So we're going to have 4 age classes at least that we're facing. And the maple can be all kinds of age classes because it keeps seeding and growing in the shade. But let's essentially say we're going to be working with 4 age classes. And the next time we'll probably stay out of this because it's going to be full of regen, and we'll probably move over and work our way through the heavier, bigger timber. Oh, look at how healthy this is. It's like a tropical forest here at Sugar Hills. It's unbelievable how productive these soils are. And no one ever spends any time down here in the summer because the bugs will just bleed you to death. But I've somehow grown accustomed to it. A little bit of oak even down here in these disturbed skid trails, but not nearly as much because the seed source isn't here. There aren't nearly as many oak to begin with. But there's one right there. And another one back there, and another one back there. So there actually is quite a bit of oak. There's a paper birch. I'm going to take a few more basal area plots. I think if I get in areas that are a little less open than this, standing in the middle of this skid trail, it's going to be more like 60 to 65. So I think we're going to be averaging 60, which is exactly what we wanted. Well, this was a huge success, and again, kudos to our crew. I say that many times, but they deserve it. It's a good plan, well executed. Have to stay in contact with this site, keep our boots on the ground, and know when it's time to come back, other than the fact that we've got 1,600 acres here, and there's many areas that we haven't even thinned the first time. So we got to get on it.